So let's start by walking through the features of the Tonestar. I'm going to take my output straight from the VCO. We have a triangle wave, coarse tune, fine tune, and a octave switch, saw wave, square wave with pulse width modulation, this pulse width modulation can come from the triangle wave on the LFO, and this is the LFO. We can also modulate pulse width from the modulation pot or the mod input on this switch, and this selects frequency or pulse width modulation. When using the mod input, the internal normaling for the ADSR is cut. Finally, we've got a square sub, which comes out on the mix output. We can mix the waves, triangle, saw, pulse, modulation, sub. We've also got a noise, which you can mix into that mix out as well. Moving on from there, we head to the filter, and let's come straight out of the filter. This takes the mix by default. Stick with some squares. Got a drive control. Much cleaner tone. Not really driven. It's got a gorgeous overdrive sound. We can have modulation from the mod in or the internal LFO. And select whether that's the triangle or the square. With the LFO's depth, we can actually modulate the oscillator by default, so turning this up. And again, that can be the square. We can modulate the filter from the ADSR, which is normal straight to that knob. We've also got a modulation in and an external audio input, which you can mix with the mix of the oscillator or use on its own and take the mix out somewhere else. Moving over from the filter, we've got the envelopes and the VCA and the final output. We can select this to drone, and then we'll get the oscillator through the filter, through the VCA, set to drone with the envelope open. Now before we move on, one great trick with a filter, and this is great for a patch tip for other bits of synthesis as well, not just with the Tonestar, but it's super simple with the Tonestar. If we get a really resonant filter sound that's actually losing some low ends, if I turn that resonance down, you can hear that low end fill out again. We can add the triangle to that. It doesn't do much, we're just mixing the triangle in. However, if we flick that switch down to no VCF, notice all those fundamental frequencies come back through, because the triangle is bypassing the filter and mixing straight in at the VCA point. So without, and listen again, get that low end back. Turning this off, I'm going to plug in a gate signal. And by default, with a switch in the mid position, the A and the R are the VCA envelope. Turn up the release, make that fade in. We can make the ADSR the master, controlling the VCA. Get nice tight and clicky. Beyond that, we've got an internal feedback. So if I turn the feedback up, this routes the output back into the filter's input, and we're getting a lot of nice feedback and distortion. So I've got my gate signal plugged in. I'm going to add some pitch information and just show you how I'll build up a patch. I'm going to start with the filter open, and I want the saw wave, some sub, a little bit of noise. I'm going to take the triangle after the filter. We've got a track in for the filter as well, so as it stands, the filter is just static. With tracking up, the actual frequency of the cutoff will follow that volt per octave and give us a more accurate wave shape across various frequencies, because both the cutoff and the pitch are following that same signal. Some drive, ADSR modulation, a little bit from the LFO onto the filter. Let's listen to that on its own without the envelope. As well as that, some ADSR. I'm going to open up the VCA's release a little bit and bring the feedback right up. Really choke it out and get some driven sounds. Now I can really clean this up as well. Let's back feedback off, drive down, a bit less resonance, take the sub and the noise out, take the triangle out. So you get nice cleaner acid-like sounds, really filthy sounds, lots of that sort of ARP crunch in the drive in the filter, and that feedback path adds loads. So that's a rundown of the features and how to get started. Let's jump into some patches. So let's explore making a drone, something a little bit different from maybe the bass riffs and more obvious things we can do with it, but we will get some nice fat bass at the end of the video. Here's my sound. And although I've got things pre-patched, nothing's happening yet. This is just the square wave. I've got the LFO, I'm going to modulate the pulse width. The speed of our LFO is being modulated by the ST16. And you can see and hear it's not just a steady rhythm overlapping on that LFO. Turning that down, turning the triangle off as well. I have a noise going into the SEM filter. That's the noise from the Tonestar. And this has been modulated by the first output on the ST16. And using the volume on the SEM filter, again this is an SE module. I'm going to mix that with the triangle and the square. Some semi-random gates firing our envelopes, but the VCA is just set to drone. If I turn that off, you can hear it's only triggering when the envelopes are. Let's put that back to drone again. And I'm going to use this gate that's firing the envelope to modulate the filter. Let's add some LFO modulation to the filter. Maybe a little bit of depth to the oscillator's pitch. Let's check out the feedback. Something nice and pulsing and a little more alive. Let's mix in some reverb from the ZDSP. It's a 50-50 mix. And play around with the Tonestar. So it's easy to get more complex modulation going on the Tonestar as well. So I've zoomed out so you can see the wider patch, and we're going to look at integrating other sound sources into the Tonestar to use its filter and VCA, and look at bringing modulation out of the Tonestar to modulate other sounds separately to what's going on in the Tonestar itself. I'm using Mutable Instruments Braids, which is just off camera, for a chord sound. Let's check that out by opening the filter. That's coming into the external input. Now I can mix in the internal oscillator. I'm going to turn up the saw wave. I'm splitting my pitch on the Beast chalkboard from ALM Busy Circuits, and I can fine tune this oscillator. To get that in tune with braids. I'm going to add the sub. Knock it down an octave. I've got my gate signal coming from the audio damage sequencer 1, which is also providing pitch. This is opening and closing the VCA. And providing modulation from this ADSR to the filter. So fairly basic so far with an external chord tone mixed with the internal oscillator. I've added in an accent, again from the audio damage sequencer 1, and that's coming into the mod in for the filter. So you can hear these little bursts where the filter's open more than the closed sound, creating little filter accents. This is going into a reverb. Just going to turn that off for now. I have a drum sound, which is coming from a Korg Volca Beats. This is going into the SEM filter from SE, set to high pass. And let's take some modulation out of the Tonestar. I'm going to take the triangle LFO to modulate the frequency of the cutoff on the high pass filter. Turn that up to audio rate with the Tonestar's LFO. We can modulate the Tonestar's LFO, so we're modulating our modulators by taking the ST16's LFO to the speed input. I'm going to turn the resonance up on the high pass filter. So we're modulating the Tonestar's modulator, which is modulating a filter on an external sound. Just going to stop the drums for now, bring the synth back up, add those accents back in, a little reverb. Reverb is the Halls of Valhalla from Tip Top Audio with the ZDSP. Let's bring the drums back in and have a quick jam. let's create what the Tonestar's really sort of strong point is and what it excels at. Sort of nice riffs, some fat bass, great sort of grinding feedback tones as well. I'm going to start my sequencer, and this is going to trigger a kick drum and the Tonestar. I have pitch coming in and my gate, but before we get to the actual internal waves, which are turned off with a mix feeding the filter, I'm taking the saw wave out into the SEM filter. I'm using the bandpass, which is modulated by the Tonestar's triangle wave LFO, which is at the bottom there. And here's that bandpass sound. You can hear we're getting a really nice resonant phaser style sound. And I'm going to mix in the sub and some pulse with modulation from that same LFO. Turn down the filter, let's get some ADSR modulation. A little bit of modulation from the LFO. I'm going to turn filter tracking off. Listen to that filter tracking. That's no tracking, and then tracking up full. You can hear the filter's resonance track, whereas if I turn that down, that stays static. Check out some feedback.